Very happy to be here, delighted to be here. Honor, pleasure, words fail me. All right, as I said, it's a pleasure talking to a writer formerly known as James.
Who is that?
So what happened to James, Ngũgĩ?
No, I don't really know what he's talking about, but he may be talking about somebody who used to write under the name James, and then one day he saw the light and he regained his name, original name of Ngũgĩ or Thiong'o. But quite frankly, there's a long history to the idea of names and naming. Anyways, there's a long history. So it's not just the name, naming, language. But quite simply, when African people were enslaved in America and Caribbean and other places, the first thing that happened was that they lost their names immediately. They were named as the owner of the population. So if one was sold to a Mr. Brown, he became Brown, meaning the one who is owned by Brown. Then he was sold somebody else called Smith. He lost Brown, he became Smith, meaning the one who is owned by Smith, and so on. And naming is like a mark on somebody's body and identity, very much like the branding is branding the body of another. Okay, and the same thing happened with the Christian mission enterprise in Africa in 19th century, where again the condition of becoming a Christian was being baptized, but not by just any name. The name has to be English name, right? So, and like you have to lose your other name to acquire an English name in order to be a Christian. So when I look at that whole history of names and so on, and although I had written and published my first 3 novels, Weep No Child, The River Between, I think, and A Grain of Wheat, under James Ngũgĩ, the moment I saw the light, I could not go back to James. So what I did is something simple. I put James in an envelope. I know these days you don't use envelopes, but you know what an envelope is? Yeah, you must know. I know. Envelope. You put a letter there in an envelope, and on top I said, return to sender, and send it to England.
It must have upset your publishers quite a lot, because I imagine that as a publisher, if one of my star authors were to say, I'm changing my name today, and all the books that you have out there in the market by this old name, they don't stand anymore, you have to change my name, and so on. It must have caused a lot of people to be upset with you.
Yes, in a way, my publishers who were really, they were upset, because I say, please, now you are known as James Ngũgĩ. Everybody knows, why do you want to lose that? Then I said, if you see, I did not use exactly those words, but when you see the light, do you go back into the dark, right, to please somebody? So I said, no. And, I persisted, and people have come to really recognize and respect Ngũgĩ or Thiong'o. And I feel good when people say Ngũgĩ or Thiong'o, because it means Ngũgĩ, son of Thiong'o. So regaining one's name is really more like regaining one's sense of self, it's regaining a sense of self. It's very important. Later we can go into the whole question of the politics of the body, because it's part of that as well, right? Yeah.
And I imagine that this was around the time that you also decided to abandon the English language as your first language of expression. Is that correct?
No,
or
no,
did
no,
that
no,
come
no,
later?
that came later. It's another struggle. That, of course, there's a connection, obviously, because language is like a naming system. The name human body, but language names the world around us, the environment and other things. Again, we can go into that, later. But the language change really came about after I had published The River Between. Let me tell you a story, actually. I think it's much easier. Okay. In 1966, I was invited to New York for the first time in my life. I had just published 2 novels, The Weep Not Child, The River Between. And actually I was in the middle of writing the 3rd one, A Grain of Wheat. I was a student at the University of Leeds in Britain, a postgraduate student, University of Leeds in Britain. And, but I was being invited as a writer to an international pen conference. All young writers will understand what this means. You are, am I really a writer? So you sit properly like a writer. How do writers sit? Is it like this? Is it like that? Is it like that? Or do they tap? So I'm saying this conference was actually important. It was organized by International Pen when Arthur Miller was the president of International Pen. It was during the Cold War, the big divide between the East and the West. But for the first time, writers from the Soviet Union and Eastern Bloc, as it was called, were being invited, including writers like, or rather were being allowed into USA, including writers like Pablo Neruda of Chile, who for 30 years could not enter United States because he was a member of the Chilean Communist Party. And for the first time, he was allowed to be there. And I was also there, yes, on one side, a student, on the other hand, a writer who does not believe that he is a writer, but he must be a writer because he is there as a regional guest of honor. So I want to tell you this story. So I'm sitting like this because I want to absorb everything, because I want to emerge from that place feeling like a writer, a real one. So I remember the last session, I'm sitting there, and who was, the people occupying the podium like this one was Arthur Miller, who was chairing that particular session. The other one was Pablo Neruda, actually was there. And the 3rd one was an Italian writer called Ignazia Sloane, Sloane. He's the author of the book Bread and Wine. Now, please, I just want you to imagine this. It was very, very important that I'm sitting there absorbing everything. And then out of my mind, I hear Sloane saying something like, complaining about the lack of Italian books translated into English. Okay? And then I heard something like, and Italian is not like one of these Bantu languages that have 1 or 2 words in their vocabulary. What? I stopped all these poses, right? All right. Now I'm very upset. And I feel I'm here as representing Africa, and Africa has been attacked, right? So I had to speak. I had not planned to speak, but I raised my hand. And I was saying, I can assure you that, Bantu languages or African languages have more than 2 words in their vocabulary, right? And Other Miller was quite generous. He said, actually, it's all right to praise your own language, but you don't really have to put down other people's language. Just, he was very diplomatic, but he smoothened the... So, after that, the joy of my being a writer is kind of... no pauses anymore. Huh? I go on a tour of America. I go to a place called Iowa. I meet a very young professor there. She was just made professor of French, I think. And her name was Gayatri Spivak. I didn't may have had her name, but now she's become this huge personality all over the world. But I didn't meet her in 1966. But I'm still smarting under that attack on Africa, right? So I back to Leeds University, and I'm studying, but I also want to resume my novel. Then I look at my novel, A Grain of Wheat, and my God, in what language am I writing it? In English. But I just come from New York, saying that African languages have a lot of vocabulary like any other language or languages. So what am I doing writing in English? So that was really the beginning of one very serious struggle with myself over the language thing. Although eventually, what made me turn to the Gikuyu language was finally when I finally returned to Kenya and I started theater in a village called Kamiretho, where I was a university professor, but on the weekends we'll go to the village, community theater. You'll tell us more about yours, see parallels. Then we wrote a play, I'll marry when I want. Then I was put in prison, maximum security prison. Do you hear that? The reason I'm saying this is because when you're in a maximum security prison, first of all, you lose your name anyway. No James even. Right? So I became a number. Right? No James, no Ngũgĩ, a number. And that's when really the decision to write in Gikuyu, I started thinking about language very seriously. And the one decision I made, which I'm very proud of, was when I said, in this prison, and I'm here because of writing in my mother tongue. Now, under prison guards, I'm actually going to write in an African language. I'm going to write in Gikuyu language in prison with paper and everything provided free by the government, which put me there. Although the paper they gave me was not intended for writing, it was intended for something else. They call it toilet paper, but it was good writing material, right? So that's how I came to really dramatic change. And that's when I wrote my first novel in Gikuyu called Devil on the Cross, or Shaitani Madara Faini. And by the before, can I introduce one person here? I met one doctor, who is a doctor who told me she wrote a PhD. Can you please stand up? Because she told me she's among the earliest to get a PhD, not only in my work, but works which included. So I was very excited. I was really very excited to meet you when you told me that. I went back to those prison days and I was thinking, why God, it is worth every struggle to write on toilet paper. Thank you.
So some of us who've read this book, Decolonizing the Mind, know the story about how you wrote this novel in prison, but you've only told half the story. You've only told us how you got the paper. You have to tell us how you got the pen and how you got language.
Oh, I was going to say I stole a pen from the guards, but then I realized it's not me. It's Wole Soyinka from Nigeria, who in a similar situation says that he stole a pen from one of the guards. Yeah, right. With me, it was like you could get a pen if you said that you are writing a confession. But I'll put it this way. Those of us who had, at least me, I was not given a reason for the detention. It's like, it's a very general statement, so I didn't know why. I could guess why I was in detention in a maximum security prison, but they didn't give us any reason. But you could get a pen if you said you are there to confess your sins. You are not told which sins, but you confess the wrongs you've done, or, so you could get a pen. So I got a pen to write a confession. But, yeah, in a way, writing novels is like a confession, isn't it? So I wrote a confession, but not the kind they were expecting, right? I wrote a novel instead, yeah.
Sure. And you've also spoken about how you got words in Gikuyu from the borders.
What I did was this. He's asked me such hard questions. I'm even sweating. Let me recover a little bit. I'll even get a bit of water.
Sure.
Okay. Oh, okay. Let me put this in a context. So, first of all, let me talk about a little bit about my Indian connection to what I did in prison. We're not allowed books in prison, I remember, except towards the end. But I don't have a magazine, I don't even remember the name, came smuggled into prison. And there was an article by Tagore. You know Tagore? Tagore? Huh? You don't know him? I can take you there. You take the north, south. Anyway, I can tell you how to get to his house. But I know you know him, of course. And in this article, it's not by him, but he was narrating a story about an Indian writer. I don't remember his name anyway, but apparently he was a young writer, and he went to see Tagore, and he was sort of young, sort of talking about how many languages he knew, like English, of course, both knew English, then Italian, French, German, Japanese, many languages impressive number of languages. Tagore is listening, and at the end he asks him, "Do you know your mother tongue?" He says, "Oh, no." Then he says, "Then you don't know any language at all," right? Now, that was actually quite important to me. That's my sort of Indian connection. It was when you're in prison, any little thing like that really can give you a lot of spirit and so on. Now, so writing a novel in Gikuyu for the first time, there are many challenges because there's no history of writing novels in my language. So it's like you're inventing a new language, more, not new. You're using the same words, of course, the language is there, but not written form. When when you write in English, there's a whole history of English literature before you, right? They are models, even if you differ from them. Yeah. But in a core language, there wasn't such, a history, and like all writers, you struggle with words anyway. Even when you write in English or Hindi or Bengali, you struggle with words anyway. That's, But even harder in some ways for me when didn't have that tradition of writing novels in Gikuyu. And but what did I do? I turned to my captors. I thought they gave us food for free. Not the best of foods in the world, but free. Bed for free. Not the best water in the world, but, well, for free. Huh? And they give us guards to guard us. Actually, this is interesting because you see prime ministers and being guarded. Right? Now, I was being guarded night and day. Right? So I said, the other thing I had to explain this. If you asked those guards anything about outside prison, they were mum. Is it raining? Is sunshine? So at some point, I stopped asking them about the outside. But then I discovered some of them were Gikuyu speakers. And they did not really know why I was there. I was put there. So I realized I would ask them, what does this and this word mean? Or what this proverb? And you start arguing. They are inside and they are sort of in the corridor. They are arguing. No, it means this. Oh, no, it means this. So I'll take notes. Huh? So I was using the guards also as my teachers. They did not know, of course, but, right? I would also try some, like, proverbs, the meaning of certain proverbs, and they would start arguing, and that way I would get to know more about that particular proverb. In other words, I used the resources that were around me, okay? Because in a sense, that's what all writers do. They use the resources around them. Mine happened to be resources under confinement, and I use those resources to my benefit. Although, under harsh conditions, resistance is very, very important. Because human beings, we must be able to kind of say no, even if whispering, no, because we're telling our spirit, no, I must not give up. That's human. You refuse to to accept evil, right? So you try and resist. So again, writing for me in prison was also, in a way, a form of resistance, right? Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. It's amazing, actually, how you turned everything that was meant to put you down into a strength, right?
Yes, it's like you. Okay, let me tell you another one which I used as a source of strength. In the prison where I was, actually it was one of the biggest prisons in Africa. And it was in some ways, it's more like this building here. Without the windows. And because it was very gray like this, but without the decorations and, but gray. Everything was, quite the same. And the food was the same every day, the same routine every day, the same clothes every day. And the mind revolts against. Or we live in a world of colors, I think. There's something strange about a colorless or one color world. One color world is
Actually, right now we are going towards that in India.
Huh?
A one-color world.
No, let's listen here. One color world is very. Let's do an experiment right now. Huh? Can you look at either the clothes you are wearing, or look at your neighbor, or even me? But look at your neighbor. See how many colors they have on themselves, all new, huh? Right? Yeah, I mean, look at how colorful. You know, how many colors is she wearing? See next to you. How many colors can you count the colors? Green, yeah, and another shade of green, and so on. Okay, and you, sir, huh? Can you stand up? Let's see. You want to see? Look, can you see how colorful? How many colors? Right? One, black, 1, 2, 3, and then this one, so many other colors, right? Maybe he's wearing about 10 or 20 colors, right? Yeah. Literally, look, and of course, when you go outside, like we're in Victoria Gardens here, and even in the street of Kolkata, it's very colorful, even very down sort of areas or whatever. Actually, what strikes out is how colorful things are, So think of, you may laugh, say, roses. Think of a world where there were, whatever you did were red roses all around you. No matter how far you looked, roses. It'd be, oh my God, you start crying, no more roses, please, another thing, right? Yeah, because multicolor world, this is what nature is around us and so on, So when in prison they give you only one color, it's actually anti-life, like literal anti-life, Now, so what I had to choose in terms of my attitude of mind. Do I write a novel in which I sound very angry? Or do I keep on cursing my captors? I don't want to become like those wars, So I'd find a clear contrast, a kind of antagonistic opposite to that which is me. Yeah. And I chose laughter, satiric laughter, because laughter is another beautiful thing we have possessed, So my novel is satiric, kind of satiric humor, right? Because I talk about a world I talk of a story where of a competition among thieves and robbers, organized by the devil, okay? And the idea is, and present in this competition is an organization called the International Organization of Thieves and Robbers, whose headquarters then, I don't know about today, maybe it shifted, but then it was in New York, okay? But the competition was only for local thieves and robbers. The international ones had to give a crown to choose the 7 cleverest thieves and robbers, local ones, and the one who wins, will get a crown. What they do is they come in front of all the other thieves and tell how they came to steal, how they came to be robbers, okay? And also tell their vision of the poor. But at the same time, they are not ordinary robbers, okay? So, for instance, initially people who rob because they are hungry or who steal sort of chicken in a village thought it's a heyday to be crowned. So one of them comes there and say, oh, wow, me, I was very hungry once and I So somebody, my neighbor's chicken, and I stole it to go and eat. And he's ejected. They're not talking about that kind of robber. He's a robber who robs in millions. It must be a robber who robs not because they are hungry or without clothes, but precisely because they have all those things, so they want to rob more, okay? So petty robbers thrown out. Only billionaire robbers are around. Now, I'll tell you one. I don't have the book here. I'd have read it to you, but let me tell you. One of the robbers, okay, I told you each robber has to come before the other robbers and say how they came to be robbers. And they must also give a vision of how they are going to expand robbery in the world, okay? So, one of the robbers talks about how he robs the masses and how he became so wealthy. And he does not know, and then he becomes a philosopher in this way. He begins to wonder, me, I have all this wealth, all this in billions, which are stolen from the people. I should be able to wear more than one pair of shoes at any one time. But now I have only one pair of shoes like any other person, right? He says, at any one time, I can only put on a certain set of clothes like everybody else. When I eat, I can enough to be able to eat and eat and eat continuously, but one plateful or two satisfy them like everybody else. No, she's wondering, what is it that I have? Oh, and there's something else which worries him. Because I'll tell you this one, but I should maybe. What shall we do about this? The secret. Okay, let me try anyway. There's one. The one thing which worries him is this, he's fairly advanced in years, and he says, and he's a man, this one, he's a male. He's wondering, and me as a male, I have enough wealth to be able to be, are there any children here? Okay, I have enough money to be able to make love to thousands of women every night. But he's worried because even one, he snores very quickly. He sort of tries and then, right? And then he discovered something else. That there's a technology. This was when Bernard had discovered the heart transplant. So he has this vision, and he tells them what we can do is, in this country, we should have a factory for manufacturing human parts, right? Spare parts for the human body. So he says, that means a rich man like me could have, 2 or 3 mouths, right? Could have 3 or 5 stomachs, right? Or as a male, can have 2 or more. So that when the first engine stalls, he can start up the other engine. And so, right. But then his wife says, oh, that's very good. Because the wives of the rich can be distinguished from the women, wives of the poor. But also there are many. When he hears, I said, no. What would you use 7 or 4? Okay. And that kind of thing. Anyway, you can read the rest in the book. So I use laughter really as a way of kind of making this resistance to this thing which is surrounding me. Like using, as you said, using the negative, or use the opposite of what is negative to create a positive. Yeah.
It also seems to me, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it also seems to me that shifting from English to Gikuyu also made your narratives more complex.
No, not necessarily, actually. Because a novel like, and the doctor can help us here, if you want, you can tell us. But a novel like, say, A Grain of Wheat, is actually a complex narrative structure, for reasons. But what I discovered is this, that each language has its own unique musicality. And quite frankly, this is the beauty of languages, like those flowers we are talking about. Each flower is a flower, no matter what color it is, And there's no flower which is more of a flower than other flowers on account of its color, okay, Yeah. So, the same musicality in languages, Each language has unique Bengali, Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, Malayalam, all those languages each has their own unique musicality, unique to themselves. So also is English, so also is Russian and Japanese and so on, What's wrong is when we say my language is the only one with musicality, right? Or the musicality of my language is more musical than any other language in the world. And if it is the language of power, like English, it is actually more of a language than any other language, right? And I say, no. So I found Gikuyu language has its own unique musicality. And for me, discovering that musicality of my own language and using it was worth every single sentence, every single word of that novel. It's like, I want to do something with my language, right? But I also have to say, languages, English is a very good language, so French is a very good language. Hindi is a very good language, Gujarati and so on. What's wrong with languages is they are being made to relate to each other on basis of hierarchy. Hierarchy. Let me give you an example. When Japan, for instance, colonized Korea from 1910 to 1945, they made Koreans do two things. One, give up Korean names, take on Japanese names, more, especially middle class, and also Japanese language, right? But wait a minute, it's not like Japan. The English did the same thing. You remember, this, but might be to remind you about Macaulay in India, 1894, the famous minutes on Indian education. You know that,
Right.
Macaulay.
Of course.
He said, we don't want Persian and Sanskrit, despite all the rights. English education. Why? Because we want to create a class of Indians, Indian name and everything else, but with an English mindset, right? The French did the same thing. They want French because they want to create a bond, a psychological bond between the people we colonize, the middle class, not everybody we colonize, and France, the psychological bond, right? It's there, Put it this way. today there are many people here who speak more than one language, right? If you go to university anywhere here or abroad and you want to learn, say, French, they don't tell you to first give up, say, English. If an English person goes to study French in Paris, the condition of learning French is not his forgetting English. There's no relationship. He said, okay, add more. But if you look at all colonial situations, from Ireland, Wales, Scotland, Native American and Maori people in Australia, Japan and Korea, that is the same. That in order to acquire the language of power and master it, you must give up your language. That was always the condition. And you are humiliated or punished or made to feel very ashamed of your own language. Right? But there's no, you and I know, there's no correlation between despising your own language and being a master of another language. There's no connection whatsoever. It's simply a question of power. Right? And this was the same. So, anyway, maybe bring me back to where I get very upset. because we are made to believe in a colonial situation, we are made to believe that there's a connection between mastery of English and rejection of whatever language is one's mother tongue. And there isn't. What we want is not hierarchy, is not languages and cultures relating on the basis of hierarchy, but on something else, on network. You see, network is like when you hold hands. You see, like let's say, if you hold hands and there's somebody else, there is, you see, it's very different from, it's a contact, okay? But suppose I was sitting on him here, with him carrying me, it's still contact, but now he's carrying me, but, right? So, this is what I'm trying, the languages are beautiful, Gikuyu, English, was wrong, and each has their own challenges. The problems is when they are made to relate on this hierarchy with the assumption that certain languages are more of languages than other languages, especially people being made to feel embarrassed about their mother tongue. That's something which I think is serious, is a negation of the very essence of what is human.
I think there's a lot of resonance in what you're saying from India. In India as well, we've had a very complicated history of struggles over language, not just between the colonial language and Indian languages, but also within Indian languages and so on. In your writings, you take a very strong position about African writers who write in European languages. You quote Chinua Achebe's gratitude to English, and I'll quote, "Those of us who have inherited the English language may not be in a position to appreciate the value of the inheritance," he says. And you ask, how did we as African writers come to be so feeble towards the claims of our own languages on us and so aggressive in our claim on other languages, particularly the languages of our colonization? Now, so my question to you is, these are words that you wrote in the 1980s. Is this something that you still feel so strongly?
Oh, yes.
Do you see the possibility of, in one sense, the empire writing back, or the colonized writing back to the empire? In other words, use the language of the colonizer to kind of subvert the narrative?
Yeah, they can do that.
Do you see that possibility?
Yeah.
Not really.
They can do that. But what they are, in the end, what they are doing, and what we are doing is expanding the possibilities of English language. There's nothing we can, okay, and I can't repeat this, that English language or French or Japanese very important languages. But so also is Gujarati, so also is Kiswahili, so also is Zulu, right? Yeah. But they are now, but for not lack of choice sometimes, there are many people in the African world, Asian world, who write in English. And even if they try to write in another language, they don't know enough of that language to write in it. Am I going to tell them, no, stop writing in English so you can start writing Gujarati? And you cannot even read a script in Gujarati? No, right. So let us be clear, oh my God. I lost my train of thought. What were you asking?
So I was asking about whether you think it's possible to use the
yes.
Yeah.
No. What we are doing is expanding the possibilities of English or French. And you can do that. There are people who write great works in another language. Conrad, whom I really admire, he was a Polish writer. He was Polish. He learned English at the age of 19. He went on to write those great novels, and to make a very big impact not on Polish literature, but on English literature, right? And some of us have learned from him, okay? Ireland. Let me give you a little bit about Ireland, just a little bit, to catch what we are together on what I'm going to say about James Joyce, okay? All right? Can I give you a little history? Not a long one, I promise. Ireland. Because Ireland was actually England's first colony. It's not India, so it's Ireland. It's not Africa, it was Ireland. And from 13th century, English settlers were settling in a place called Munster in Ireland, and they owned land there. But Irish language was more vigorous and more literally stronger than English. And naturally, when you go to a place where one language is the dominant one, you are more drawn toward that language. That's a natural thing. If I stay in Calcutta here, it would be ridiculous for me not to learn the language spoken here, right? But London said no. They started passing laws prohibiting English settlers from speaking Irish. Then they passed another law prohibiting even Irish people who worked within what they call the English Pale, to speak Irish in that area. And even then, by 16th century, they had not quite succeeded. Then came a very famous writer called Spencer, Edmund Spencer. You know him, those who are English students? Hello, how many have heard of Spencer? Fairy Queen. I knew. Even yesterday when I mentioned Jane Austen, everybody knew. I do also. You know Spencer, very great poet or whatever, contemporary of Shakespeare, but he was a settler in Munster, Ireland. And in 1596, or 1595 thereabout, he wrote a book, A View of Ireland at the Present Time. In this book is actually a dialogue, in a kind of Platonic tradition of a dialogue between two characters. One, a visiting lord from London, and an English settler in Munster, okay? And they're saying, why is it that after all these years, we have not managed to tame the Irish? Why? So in a book, and you can go and read it now after this from the library, some of the sections is the kind of advice or devices they come up for erasing the Irish memory of who they are. And one thing they said was language, right? English on the Irish, okay? The other one was naming system. They said, it's in the book. They said, we must make them forget about these O's and Marks. You know, the Irish call themselves Macmillan or Mark so-and-so or O. Donovan or something, right? Apparently that naming structure was very important had a meaning. So they think that if you destroy their naming system, they'll forget who they are. Now, so we're talking about 16th century, right? They're thinking of how to use language and naming system as a way of erasing the memory, the sense of who the Irish people are. Okay. So it's a long history. Sure. What happened in India, what happened in Africa.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. On the question of language, you've been a novelist and a playwright as well. And so when you write a novel, you're basically working alone, right? And you're writing something that has to be read. When you're writing a play, on the other hand, you're writing something that has to be spoken. And languages are that. Languages are not just read and written. They're also spoken and they're also gestured. As an actor, I can say that, I'm very aware of the fact that the language that comes most easily off my tongue, and not just off my tongue, but off my body, the language that sits most comfortably on my skin is actually Hindi. Even though I work a lot in English, I'm fairly comfortable in English, and so on. How do you see the connection between language, body, tonality, music, gestures, and culture?
Well, the problem we have all the time, me in particular, is all these things are connected. The body. This machine, well, I don't call it machine, we have it's incredible. We may not always realize, but we learn everything that we've done in this world. We learn for the body, our bodies, right? And take the technology of walking, for instance. Walk is a movement. We have this, our legs, correct? So when you've got a car or bike or something else or aeroplane, you're only enhancing a technology we already have naturally. The technology of making things, machines that make there is this and many other things. We can think of computer hard drive into our brain and memory and so on. The bodies are very incredible. The body is a fast field of knowledge in everything. Technology, invention, everything, Even when it comes to music, the rhythm, when you watch, people always walk, because of our two legs, we walk rhythmically all the time. We walk in music or beats, right? And sometimes, let me show you, in the street of Calcutta, you walk, all campuses, some are walking rhythm, and others are in a hurry. So you can actually, if you look carefully, you can see they are making rhythm with their feet. Some are making one whole beat. The others have a beat or whatever, a quarter. And sometimes it's very interesting just to watch, because you can see, if you are playing the piano, you can see that some are playing full note and half note, 16th note, and that kind of thing. And the rhythm is clear. When you're making things, pulling, it's okay, always rhythm. And then we do like that. We do like. And then you see my feet begin to move. Later, even without, I begin to do, right? Or whatever. So the body is really incredible in everything, music and so on. So my God. Yes, can you ask me the question again?